Hey, welcome to my channel. So today we're going to take the balance staff that I made in the previous video, part 1, how to make a balance staff on a Watchmakers lathe, and I'm going to see if what my fitting is for that balance staff. I'm going to test the upper jewel and see if the pivot will fit into that jewel, and I'm going to test the lower jewel and see if the lower pivot will fit into that jewel. If neither of them fit, then I have to take some material off of both those pivots. I will probably put the balance back on, stake the balance back on to the new balance staff. I can put it in the lathe with that balance on. I can also put it in the J-Cot tool to finalize those pivots. I also want to make sure that the length of the balance staff is correct. It should be, because I did a lot of measuring. That should be absolutely accurate. So thanks for watching. Thanks for watching my channel, and let's get after it. Okay, I've got the watch movement here, and I've got the balance staff that I made. So it's right here, and I got to be very careful with the pivots here. I'm just going to rest this balance staff on the on this piece of Rodico that I have. Maybe I'll just poke the balance in there, or the staff in there, like that, and then set that aside for a second. What I want to do is take the balance bridge off. See, I've changed the name of it. To protect the innocent. That just flew off the screw, so I'm just going to put that out of the way and then rotate that a bit and then just get that balance off here of this very beautiful movement. And what I don't know yet is whether that balance staff will fit into the hole here. So I have jewel gauges that I could use, but I could also just put this balance in and have a look. So I'm going to try that out. Alright, let's test this balance here. So I'm going to grab the balance, grabbing the upper part of the balance, and I'm just going to get very close here and see if I can poke that into the hole. No, I think it needs to get a bit of material taken off of that. So, and just for the heck of it, I'm going to do the exact same thing with the bridge. All right, there's the bridge, or the balance cock as they call it, and I got to get in very close here, so I'm likely to hit the camera again. But I got to grab the lower part of this and then turn it around. And I'm using a technique I showed you when I showed you how to hold it. See if that fits here. Oh, I've got to take a bit of material off this one. So both sides I've got to trim down a bit. So I more than likely then will probably put these in the lathe. Put this balance back in the lathe and use my stone to remove material on that, because it's not fitting in either one. So I got the right size, but let me see if I've got my jewel gauges, and I'll measure it with the jewel gauge. Okay, these are my Schwarzschild's cylindrical metric jewel gauge, blah 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 blah. So those are vintage jewel gauges. These are very handy. Now I do have one of these gauges where the end broke off, and I think I was guilty of doing that. So let me flip these around so you can see the numbers. So those are the gauges there. So I was looking to see if that particular watch was 11 or a 12. So the 12 is here, and I broke the end off the 12. So what I have to do to fix that is take a piece of steel and then work that down to a 12 again. And I'll be able to stick. I will be able to use it again. Let me see if that's, yeah, I think that's broken off. Maybe not. It looks like it's smaller than it should be, so let me grab an 11 and see what that looks like. You know what? The 11 is broken off, the 12 is fine. So I'll turn the 11 around the other way. And what's the 10 look like? I think the 10's okay as well. Yeah. And these are very, very small gauges. So you can see the end of these. See if I move it over a bit, but you can see the end here. This is not the end that you see. It's the end is on the end of this end. So you've got you've got the main piece of metal here, and then there's a smaller piece of metal here, and then the very small piece of metal, and that's the actual jewel gauge. So what I'll do is use this gauge here, and I'm going to put that inside the jewel hole and see if it snugs in nicely with the jewel hole. And this one is it says 12, so we'll have a look at that and see if that works. So is that a 12? That's the question. So I'm going to try not to hit the camera, but I want to get a nice close-up for you. No, 12's too big. So you just have to push it into the hole and see. And I think 11 is the one I broke. So, and if I say 10 is too loose, then it's got to be the 11. So I'm guilty. Yeah. So 10 goes all the way in. Ten goes in, so the size has got to be 11. And if I put this gauge right next to the pivot, I can see that pivot is just a bit too big on both sides. So I do have to put those pivots back into the. Let me calm the camera down in a second. I do have to put these pivots back into the lathe to work on those. And maybe I'll just do a close-up here of that. I'll show you the jewel gauge and what a 10 looks like, or maybe what a 12 looks like. So 12 is a little bit too big for that hole, but it'll get you an idea, or give you an idea of what that looks like next to the pivot, right? So let me just get a close-up of this and be back in a millisecond. So this is about as close as I can get to that pivot. I can show you the end of a screwdriver to see how big that is, but that is micro work. So that pivot on the end that I made, that you can see there, is that fit into the 0.12, I believe, when I was testing it on the jewel, on the gauge. So you can see the pivot on the left-hand side does need some work. It's not down far enough. It's got too much material on it, so I've got to remove material from that pivot, just to show you that, so you know there's the tip of my tweezers right there. So that's a pretty big close-up we're looking at here. Pretty intense close-up. So that's the pivot on the upper part of the balance. So that's where the hairspring would ride, and then the lower part, as I showed yesterday, is where I cut the balance staff for the roller table, and then the safety roller below that. And so I got to work on the safety roller pivot side more than the other side. And the jewel gauge that you're seeing there, it's a 1.12. So I think this is and it doesn't fit, so it's a 0.11 that goes into that jewel. So I need to work on that on the lathe. So there you go. And there's another look at the balance staff close-up. As you can see, it's pretty fine work. It's not too bad. I think I did a pretty good job on the left-hand side and the undercut for the oil. On the right-hand side, I can cut a little more material off of that, but it's really not necessary. But I do have to trim those pivots to be a little more flat. They're a little rounded, or maybe too conic. Like I said yesterday, 1/3 of the pivot needs to be flat or straight, with no coned edge or no angle, and then the 2/3 of it has that dome or the cone or the conic shape. So it's not too bad, and I know I can work that pivot in the lathe. So I didn't want to spend the whole video working the pivot, because you guys were going to kill me if you saw that. But in general, that's what it looks like. It does look like the tip of that pivot might be the right size. The one on the right hand side, the one on the left hand side is not. So, and this is not a photo, by the way. This is a video. I'm going to try to sneak my tweezers in here. There you go. Look at that. So that's a close-up video, and it's with my full HD 1080p camera that I have, and I've got it almost sitting on top of that, and I've got indirect lighting on there right now with a flashlight in order to get the the view. So it's pretty neat, but it's pretty close, almost microscope level. So pretty cool camera. Anyway, so I'm gonna chuck this up in the lathe and get at it, trying to get those pivots in better shape than they're in right now. Alright, there's a picture of the pivot on its own, in case you were interested in that. Again, I'm using indirect lighting because I've got this pivot, the camera, the full HD camera, really close to this pivot, so the lighting is not the best, but it's the best I can do for now. So, there you go.